Stepfather treats me as a free babysitter, but now I put a stop to it by doing this, so he kicks me. I'm 17 now, but my parents divorced when I was 10. My mom, Claire, and my dad and Mark were married for over a decade, but their relationship was far from perfect growing up. I remember them arguing a lot, mostly about money, my dad's long work hours, and what my mom perceived as a lack of attention from my dad as a software engineer and worked long hours to provide for us while my mom stayed at home to take care of me. She often complained that my dad put his career ahead of his family and that resentment built up over the years. The breaking point came when my dad admitted to an emotional affair with a coworker. He swore it was never physical, but for my mom, it didn't matter. She saw it as a betrayal and filed for divorce. My dad moved out, and my mom got full custody of me. My dad agreed to generous child support payments and allowed my mom to keep the house. I visited my dad every other weekend, but I stayed with my mom most of the time. About 2 years after the divorce, my mom started dating Greg, a contractor she met through mutual friends. At first, Greg seemed like a decent guy. He was friendly, funny, and good at fixing things around the house. My mom seemed genuinely happy for the first time in years, and I wanted to support her. They got married when I was 13, and shortly after they had my half-brother Jamie, is now 4.5. Sister Emma now 2. At first I thought this new blended family might work. Greg didn't try to play the dad role with me, which I appreciated, and I was excited to have siblings, but as the years went on, Greg started expecting more and more from me, especially after my mom went back to work part-time when Jimmy was born. I was happy to help out. I'd watch him for short periods while my mom ran errands, or I'd play with him when she needed a break. But as Emma came along and my mom went back to work, the occasional babysitting turned into an expectation. At first it was small things, watching the kids while Greg worked on a project or stepping in when my mom had a work meeting. But then it escalated, started assuming I'd be available to watch Jimmy and Emma whenever they needed. It didn't matter if I had homework plans with friends or extracurricular activities. My life was expected to revolve around their schedule. When I tried to push back, Greg would make comments like, "You're part of this family, so you need to contribute," or "What else are you doing that's so important? It's not like you're paying rent." My mom didn't intervene. She just said, "You know how stressed Greg is? Can't you help out a little more?" Things finally came to a head a few weeks ago. Greg and my mom announced they were going to a friend's birthday party and told me I needed to babysit Jamie and Emma. I already had plans to study with a group for an important exam, so I told them I couldn't. Greg brushed me off, saying, "It's just one night, cancel your plans." I stood firm and said no. Despite this, they left anyway, assuming I'd give in and stay to watch the kids. Furious, I decided I need to put a stop to this behavior. I packed my study materials and texted my mom and Greg that I left the house and that the kids were alone and left the house, but I was watching my siblings through the camera sleeping, and I was hiding behind the house until I saw my mom and Greg come back. I would never put my siblings in danger, but I wanted to teach my mother and Greg a lesson. When they came back and found Jamie and Emma alone, they were livid, as you can imagine. Greg exploded, calling me irresponsible and accusing me of endangering my siblings. I fired back that they were the ones who endangered the kids by leaving them with no supervision despite my refusal. That's when Greg told me, "If you don't want to be a part of this family, then pack your bags and leave." So I did. Called my dad and explained what happened, and he came to pick me up that night. My dad was furious when he heard how I'd been treated. He told me I was welcome to stay with him for as long as I needed. Questions asked the next day by my dad informed my mom that since I was now living with him full time, he would no longer be paying her child support. My mom was furious, accusing him of taking my side and sabotaging her family. She called me repeatedly, demanding I come back, but I refused. I told her that I knew the real reason she wanted me back wasn't because she missed me. It was because they needed the child support money to stay afloat since I left. Things have been tough for my mom and Greg, without my dad's child support payments. They're struggling financially. Mutual family friends have told me that they're close to losing the house because they can't keep up with the mortgage. My mom has been begging me to return, promising things will be different and that Greg will apologize, but I don't trust them. Greg hasn't reached out or apologized directly, and I doubt anything will change if I go back. My mom has also tried to guilt-trip me, saying that Jimmy and Emma misses me and that I'm abandoning my family. I love my siblings, but I can't keep sacrificing my time and mental health to be their unpaid babysitter. It's not fair to expect me to take on responsibilities that aren't mine. Living with my dad has been a breath of fresh air. He's supportive and respects my boundaries. He doesn't expect me to act like a second parent to anyone, and me finally have time to focus on school and my own life. I've even started exploring college options and thinking about my future, something I never felt like I could prioritize while living with my mom and Greg. My dad has also made it clear that he's proud of me for standing up for myself. He told me, "You're not responsible for cleaning up the mess they made. You deserve to focus on your own life." Despite how much better things are with my dad, I still feel a pang of guilt. My mom sacrificed a lot after the divorce, and I know she's stressed trying to balance work and raising 2 young kids, but I also know it's not my job to fix their financial problems or step into a parental role for Jamie and Emma. I miss my siblings, and I worry about how all this is affecting them, but I can't go back to an environment where I'm treated like an employee and of a family member. I've worked hard to set boundaries, and going back would only undo all of that. So Red, am I the a-hole? For moving in with my dad and leaving my mom and stepfather to figure things out on their own. Op is absolutely not responsible for raising her siblings or fixing her mom and stepdad's financial problems. Op tried to help when she could, but they took advantage of her and didn't respect her boundaries. Moving in with Op's dad was the right decision. Op's mom and stepdad need to figure out how to manage their household without putting the burden on Op. And now let's hear the community's opinion, not the. Greg's behavior is outrageous. He expected you to drop everything and act like a full-time nanny, and when you stood up for yourself, he threw you out. That's not how a parent or step-parent should act. It sounds like your mom let him call the shots, and now they're dealing with the consequences of their actions. Don't let them guilt you into coming back. You deserve to focus on yourself, not the a-hole. I understand why you feel guilty, but none of this is your fault. You're a teenager, not a living babysitter, and it's unfair that they put so much pressure on you. It sounds like moving in with your dad has given you the space and support you need, and that's what matters. Your mom and stepdad made their choices, and now they have to live with them, not the a-hole. You did the right thing by standing up for yourself and moving in with your dad. It's unfortunate that your mom and stepdad is struggling, but they created this situation by treating you unfairly. It's okay to prioritize your own well-being, especially when they clearly weren't considering it. Stay with your dad, focus on your future, and don't let their guilt-tripping pull you back into a toxic environment. 20 female at the time met EB 20-ish female at a tavern I used to waitress at. We were both waitresses and we hit it off pretty fast. I was a little naive and trusted her despite being warned more than once by different people that she was bad news. In my defense, my father died soon after I met she and I desperately needed a friend. There were all sorts of red flags, and I did all the dumb you're not supposed to do with people. I loaned her money. She usually paid me back, typically after running a mommy for cash. I loaned her my car for a short time as I really only wanted to drive my dad's car for a while after he passed and hers was out of commission. I went far out of my way for her more than once, and it's clear to me now that she never actually appreciated me as a person. I was her walking taxi car and bank loan service. I very stupidly put her on my phone plan after she complained about not having a working phone, and that bit me in the butt a little ways down the line. I did it right before the plague hit, and she decided that waitressing was just too stressful for her. So she quit with no savings and no job lined up. This meant I had to pay a neat sum of about $600 for her iPhone and watch in order to keep my own plan from being cut. So that's basically the summation of how I was an idiot. Now on to the good part. I met my significant other at the same tavern. He was a cook. I was a waitress. We were good friends, and after about a year we became more than that. We're both head over heels for each other and having an excellent, healthy relationship. It was one of those rare moments in life when you just know. So we happily entered into the best relationship of both of our lives, and I suppose my happiness must have physically pained EB at this point in time. It's a year or so after she and I met. I had learned to cope with my father's sudden passing. I was financially secure. I genuinely enjoyed my jobs. I loved my boyfriend, and I just didn't need her like I once did. Then the seemingly impossible happened. Despite me being on the pill and despite my boyfriend's vasectomy, I was pregnant with his vasectomy was one of the reversible ones, and it decided to reverse on its own. My pill was only about 93% effective. The stars aligned, and I became pregnant. With our beautiful daughter. I was about a week or so away from turning 22 at this point. My boyfriend was the more financially secure one at the time due to some unrelated drama at the tavern that forced me to quit, but I had another job and was just starting a second one. By this point we had moved in together. And although money was tight for about a month, I had already secured another job. And those paychecks had just started rolling in now. There of course was drama with EB the night before. I found out it was her birthday, and her boyfriend was taking her to a very high-end, pricey restaurant. Reservations needed and all that jazz. I messaged him and asked him to keep quiet, so that I might surprise her by showing up at the dinner after I had previously told her I couldn't go, but I needed to know the name of the restaurant so I could look up the menu prices and make sure it wouldn't be financially irresponsible of me to go when we were just starting to be able to loosen our belts again. I also asked him not to tell her because I didn't want to make an empty promise and disappoint her if I had to bow out. Besides, we had already made plans to celebrate her birthday together afterwards, and I had already dropped serious money on her birthday presents. Well, I decided I couldn't go to my annoyance. Her idiot boyfriend went ahead and told her anyway, so when I messaged him to tell him I wouldn't be able to make it, there was a silence from the both of them after he tried to get me to go, and I declined. As a note, he never offered any help, he just asked me to reconsider. I certainly wasn't expecting any help and had already decided that it would be an irresponsible move on my part. EB was upset that I couldn't go to the next day. It occurred to me that I hadn't had my period in a suspiciously long time, and I had been dealing with unexplained nausea for a few days, so I took a pregnancy test to my great surprise. It was positive. I was a jumbled mess of emotions. What was left of my family was really just a massive migraine on the best of days, and I knew there was just no way I'd ever be able to count on my mother's support. My boyfriend's family sends us their love and what support they can, but they live halfway across the country. We have one close friend who's an honest-to-God angel and a massive lifesaver, and in terms of people who are physically able to be there for us, she is our whole support system. I tried to call Ev, but she kept rejecting my calls. When she finally decided to speak to me after I texted her the news, she called me and made her birthday dinner into a huge ordeal. She told me that she was disappointed. And how could I do this to her, and why couldn't I just have borrowed money from her boyfriend to go? I apologized and told her that I just couldn't really afford it, and of course I'm not going to ask her boyfriend for money. First of all, we weren't close like that, and secondly I'm not going to borrow money that I can't afford in the first place. EB of course had no concept of such financial responsibility, as at this point she had borrowed over $11,000 from me, close to $2 actually, and she still hadn't paid me back for the $600 phone bill. She refused to accept my apologies, and that's when the real nastiness began. She told me that I was too irresponsible to have a baby, that I was too poor since I had decided not to attend her dinner in the interest of saving money, and that of course A was absolutely not an option in her mind. According to her, the only thing I could do was carry my pregnancy to term and give my baby up for adoption. I was shocked. I had been a little apprehended at first when I got the positive test results, but I knew that I wanted this baby. I am extremely pro-choice, but it just wasn't something I could bring myself to do. Besides, I was already back on the path of financial security I had once been on, and I was living with someone I love more than I thought possible and who very much loves me back. We're both mentally stable, happy, and healthy. And young. We already knew we wanted a family together. We wanted this baby. When I communicated all this to EB, she said I was being, and that I could either give my baby up or lose her as a friend. That moment was like a sucker punch of clarity. I finally realized and accepted what everyone around me had been telling me the whole time. She was a manipulative, selfish, greedy, self-centered, scaly little snake. She was an entitled B, capital B. I informed her that this was an incredibly easy decision to make and told her that our friendship was over. I told her that I expected the $600 I loaned her, and she went ballistic first. She tried to claim that she didn't owe me anything, and when I doubled down, she said that she shouldn't have to pay me because she allowed me to drive her car a few days, and when I returned it, it smelled like cigarettes, and her door was apparently somehow damaged. I laid out the stupidity of what she was saying and, to take her to small claims court. At this point she was too much of a coward to talk to me herself. So she sobbed to a coworker and pity-partied her way into talking to me. For her, I can only imagine the lies EB told to garner her help. Eventually we agreed on $300 because I was just sick of her and wanted the whole ordeal done and over with. EB had her boyfriend write me a check for only $250, and on the note line, she wrote a snide little comment about it being for my poor baby. I debated on hauling her to court, but at this point I felt that she was far more of a headache than the drama was actually worth and decided to cut my. I texted her coworker and warned her not to be like me and advised her that she should be careful around her and that she should never lend her any money. She never responded, but with an absolutely astounding lack of self-awareness, EB decided to break her silence and rage at me about how I shouldn't involve other people in our business. All I could do was laugh. I blocked her on every social media platform known to man, blocked her phone number, and basked in my newfound happiness of life without a soul. Leech attached to me, my significant other, and I have since moved into a spacious home that we're very secure in. Our beautiful baby girl was born a week early but perfectly healthy on Christmas Eve. I've never been happier or more content in my life. We're still very much in love, and we've been discussing marriage. Our daughter is a happy, healthy nugget of pure joy. All in all, I look forward to is a life with my beautiful family, and I count my blessings every day. I know the B who can't pay back $600 didn't just call you broke. Unfortunately, people don't listen. The person you tried to warn is probably going to go down the same rabbit hole. Glad you finally broke ties with her. $600 is actually not as bad as it gets. In these types of situations, not my story but my cousin's, let's call him Dave. So Dave, 34, male, was dating a Karen for a really long time, like 4 years, and earlier this year he finally proposed. Now Karen is a bit of a gold digger and a very entitled person. She was a bit of white trailer trash, but fancied herself a rich lady. She was very vocal to all the other women in the family about how she wanted a traditional diamond ring and how she'd like Dave to follow the tradition of getting her an engagement ring worth 3 months' salary. Now Dave isn't super rich, but he does have a stable factory job. And around here that's basically upper class, and his 3 months' salary would be between $3,000 and $6,000 depending on overtime. Needless to say, Dave did not want to spend that on a ring given the global situation and the fact that he could be laid off at any time. He'd been doing the ring shopping at the beginning of the year and thankfully wasn't laid off. So Dave decided to look into alternatives and found white sapphires. For those of you who don't know, white sapphires are a fantastic alternative to diamonds. Can be grown, so they're not gotten with labor, aren't artificially inflated in price, and to someone who isn't a jeweler, they look exactly like any diamond. So Dave was able to buy the size stone that Karen wanted with a fancy setting, gold band, the works, for a fraction of the cost if it had been a diamond. He proposed and told her that it was a diamond and that he'd saved for a year. A bit of a move, but it was probably him being petty. He jokingly told me it was probably his way of getting revenge for her being such a Karen. However, it doesn't end there. As you can imagine, once the wedding planning started, it didn't go well. Karen was an entitled witch and didn't understand why a global pandemic was cause enough to hinder her from having her perfect day. It all came to a head one day when she and Dave had a fight over the guest list. The dream venue she chose didn't allow for as many people as they needed, like 300. They both have big families, and Karen sent out invitations to save the dates without Dave's knowledge, except she only invited her side of the family. No one on Dave's side got an invite, not even the in-laws. Dave called off the wedding and kicked her out of his apartment in his name. Karen kept the ring out of spite. Something Dave didn't really care about. It didn't hold any value to him, and he was more worried about the wedding he was now having to cancel it. The texts he was getting from Karen's side took a few months, but they all calmed down, and he didn't hear from her until last month. Turns out she tried to pawn the ring to a pawn shop in town known for its jewelry business. The owners were in the jewelry business before they switched to pawning. She was convinced that she'd get a few thousand for it since she still believed it was a diamond that was pawned. Offered her a couple hundred because it was a sapphire and the owner actually liked it. She called Dave several times. And sent a billion texts he never answered or picked up, demanding that he pay her in cash what the ring was worth to sue for the lie he told her, etc. He and I had a good laugh. Listening to her tantrum, I guess diamonds might be a girl's best friend. But sapphires are definitely not for Karen. It would be funny if she sued. Because in many states she owes him. Dave is clearly a smart man. I hope his next partner loves him so much that an onion ring would suffice. Some background. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for over 3 years. His parents divorced young, so his stepmom and his dad have been together for quite some time. His stepmom, we will call her Jamie, has always been a manipulative person. When my boyfriend was young, Jamie made him think that his mom didn't like him, so he didn't like his mom for a while. Jamie has 2 boys from a previous marriage. Both are older than us, although we have been together. The longest one got married about 1.5 years ago. The other just very recently started dating a girl, so on Christmas we get together and eat and whatnot, then time to open gifts anyway. All of us got cards from Jimmy's and boyfriend's dad are both stepsons. And their significant others got hearts around their name, but my boyfriend and I, Nada, we open them up, and I get the generic Merry Christmas, love Jamie and X great. Then I hear an A that was so sweet from the new girl, what I've been around for so long. And she gets a meaningful message. Jamie is definitely the type of person who would do that on purpose. At one point in time she thought I was ruining his life. Now the petty revenge today was his grandparents. Christmas they do in an awkward way where we have to watch each person open every present so the spotlight is on them. My boyfriend and I got his grandma and grandpa shadow box and put the word family on the glass and put clothespins to hold up photos on the inside, so we put a photo of everybody who was at the Christmas in there except Jamie as his grandma and grandpa opened the gift. Their eyes lit up, and everyone enjoyed seeing a photo of them except her. She looked so, and she got up and left the room for a second. B, if you don't treat me like family, you won't be family. This is amazing. My father-in-law's girlfriend D is the same way, and we all despise her at our wedding. She went out of her way to make my mother-in-law feel uncomfortable at her own son's wedding when she doesn't even like my husband, so our petty revenge this year was at Christmas. D says that she hates gifts. Cards because they are impersonal and don't require any thought. She also hates to eat out because she thinks she's an amazing cook. She isn't. The entire family got together and got her gift cards for restaurants. She hated them but had to smile and say thank you to everyone. Luckily we all know father-in-law will get them in the end to use himself.